Hey, Paul, how are you doing? Oh, I think you might be muted.
You would think I would be better at this by now.
Every time, I know. I do the same thing.
So how's everything going?
It's going well. Yeah, it's going well. I've actually had COVID.
Oh,
So
have you?
yeah, I'm fully vaccinated since last February.
Okay.
But yeah, I got COVID. It kind of hit me hard. So
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, thank you. But I'm much better now. So I plan to be back in the office on Monday. But
Okay.
yeah, how have things been going with you?
They've been good. They've been really busy, but good. We still
Yeah,
have a lot of clients coming through. We're doing a lot of stuff like this. It's been really good. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, us too. I think this time of the year, everybody starts to kind of reevaluate things and go, oh, I'm at the end of the year,
Right.
and I think they all kind of, are like, I've got to get help. So that's a good
Yeah.
thing.
Typically, I think once we get into early December, it'll slow down some,
Yeah,
because people will say, "Oh, I'll worry about it after Christmas." But
right.
for
Yeah,
right now, we're still staying busy.
good, 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 good. Yeah. Um, this webinar has been very popular.
Good.
Yeah, 107 people. So that's good. I think we did
Now,
a great.
do you know? I mean, my assumption is that most of them are people that are considering going into business. They're not actually in business yet.
There were a lot of business names,
Okay.
but I did not actually do the tally where I can see who's actually in business.
Sure.
But
Okay.
I will as soon as this is over and send that over to you guys
Okay.
and the list. But yeah, it should be interesting.
It'll be an interesting mix. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
And then I'm just going to ask them to put their questions in the Q&A box, and then we
Okay.
can answer as many as we can at the end. I know we have
Okay.
a lot to get through, so
Yeah. Yeah. And are you going to moderate that
I
as
am.
far as okay.
Yeah.
And uh this lasts an hour?
Yes. Is
Okay.
that enough time?
Should be.
Okay.
If I
Yeah.
start to run long, I'll pick it up towards the end and I'll try to leave some time for questions at the end.
Yeah. Okay. And I think these are always such a good idea, a good prompt for them to reach out and get get that intake session. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Were you part of the emerging leaders thing last week?
I wasn't.
I
I
know Kim
wasn't.
was.
Yeah, Kim was. How did
I
it
saw her.
go?
It was good. Yeah, it was really good. So they had, I had, I think 5 businesses in my group, that I gave feedback to on business plans. One of them was one that came through here, so I knew them already. But the others
Okay.
were ones that I wasn't familiar with, and yeah, it was really good. I think they
That's
learned a lot.
great.
Yeah,
And these are like high level businesses, right?
yeah. These
Yeah.
are um, stabilized, looking to grow businesses. Like they've
Nice.
gotten over that first hump. They're now at the point where they're really looking to take that next step.
Right.
Um, Are you familiar with have you heard anything about the Minority Business Accelerator program that the Chamber's doing?
I just
MBA?
saw that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are, and I don't really have any details on it yet, because even though I'm sort of in charge of figuring that out, that might be an after Christmas thing. I don't know. We'll
Right.
see how it goes. But so we are working on having a feeder program into that program, essentially,
Oh,
meaning
cool.
that and this is something that they've done in Greenville already and is being expanded to Charleston and Columbia. And the
Okay.
idea is that for businesses that are not quite ready for
Yeah.
the Chamber's MBA program, they can come through our program, which is about the same length of time. It's
Mhm.
called Entrepreneurial Pathways, and we'll be kind of helping them get to the point of being prepared for that next step with the chamber. So we're going
Okay.
to be launching that sometime in the spring as well. So
Okay,
I'll
great.
keep you posted on that as
Yeah.
I develop the details on it, but I just wanted to give you a little heads up that it's
Okay,
coming. So
great. And that's for people that are already in business or just starting
that's
or
for people who are already in business. But see, I have my view of startups is anybody that's been in business 2 years or less.
yeah.
Okay. So in that sense, yes, they could be a startup in the sense
Right.
that, um, but it's not really for pre-ventures. It is for those who, are actually, have actually opened the doors.
Right.
So, but I know you'll be hearing more about that from the chamber over the
Yeah,
next.
that's great. Well, I'd love to feed some
Yeah.
people over to your
Yeah.
direction as well and get them ready.
Um, I think we're looking at maybe up to 15 or 20 businesses for each one. So in
Okay,
other words, for MBA and then for entrepreneurial pathways. So
that's a
still
good,
trying to figure out the timing a little bit. They're looking at trying, they would like to launch in late January. Realistically, I would be surprised if we make that.
right.
But sometime first quarter of next year.
Okay, that sounds cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole definition of in business is still because, I asked that actually of Donald, who's the head of the Women's Business
Yeah.
Center with the SBA. And
Right.
he said that, if you're properly structured, you've had any infusion of cash and or you've made your first sale. Well, a
Right.
lot of people do go into it and they already have put in $10,000 to get everything up and running, but they
Right.
actually haven't sold their first thing. But they're out
Hmm.
there. Like I have people doing pop-ups and they're not really selling them yet, but they're kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
and one of our clients just got $100,000 loan from Climb.
Right.
So are they in business yet or no?
Well, yeah. I mean, if they haven't had a sale yet,
Yeah,
then, technically, I
no.
guess no.
Okay.
But I think people, when they hear the word startup, what they think of is haven't opened the doors yet, pre-venture. I look at
Right.
it as those who are still kind of in that, what I consider to be a startup phase, which is that first couple of years where, you're trying to grow and stabilize your business enough that
Right.
an established bank will be interested in looking at you, or,
Yeah.
you're open to government contracting opportunities or any of those, next level kind of things. But in
Right.
reality, yeah, I mean, if you have, um, established yourself legally, gotten a business license, put some money in, or made a sale. And I think it might even be that you only have to do 3 of those things. I'm not sure you have to do
Yeah.
all 4. You are technically, per the SBA, in
In
business.
business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because
Um,
we have to track that. And we have a lot of those that are like right before those steps. And then they get to
yeah.
those steps. And I don't know what date is their in business date.
Right.
And they don't think they're in business because they haven't actually opened their store
Right.
or sold that first product.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, ideally, realistically, that's what I like to see
Yeah.
is that they've actually done that.
Right.
Technically, per the SBA, they don't have to have necessarily, but I consider it. I do like to see that they've actually made a sale, that they've
Right.
done something, that they have a
Yeah.
customer.
Wait to that
Um,
point. Yeah.
yeah,
Because up until then, it's kind of theory,
yeah,
you know.
it's all in theory, because a lot of people get an LLC, some of
Right.
them get a business license, and they don't do anything
Yep.
from that point. And so I don't consider that,
Right.
just having the LLC or the business license or an EIN or, some other kind of structure. I don't necessarily consider that being in business.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. I think we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. Let's see. All right.
And if you want to wait, give everybody a few minutes to get on, that's okay. I don't,
Okay.
um,
Let's see.
I don't
I
have
am
any pressing deadline that I have to finish by per se. So
okay.
if we run over a little bit, that's fine.
Okay. Great. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, we have about 17 in here.
Okay.
Okay. All right, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much all for attending today's webinar about funding your startup. We are, a community resource for you. I am Amber Skellinger with the I Hope Women's Business Center. Our focus is on women and minorities that are starting businesses, but there are so many community organizations out there to help you with free resources, low-cost resources to assist you. And our only mission, our shared mission, is to help bolster our Charleston area low country small business community. And so we are so thankful to our today's expert. Paul Featheringill is the Regional Director of the Small Business Development Center. And we are so glad to have you here today, Paul.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invite, and I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to sharing some of this information.
Also, one more thing, everyone, just drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we will try to answer as many of those questions as possible at the end. And then we will also be sending out a recording as well as our contact information.
Okay. Are you ready for me to start, or do you want to give it a couple minutes? You're muted.
Yes, take it away, Paul. Thank you.
Take it away. Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Paul Featheringill. I am the UofSC Region Director with the South Carolina Small Business Development Center. And the topic of our presentation today is funding for your startup. One of the most crucial issues that businesses are going to face, especially early as they're getting started and getting up and running, is financial challenges. And so that's part of what we offer, is helping people to determine and find where some of those resources are. So who are we? So the South Carolina Small Business Development Centers, we are a statewide network of highly trained professionals. We have 20 centers around the state. We have over 50 consultants. We offer no cost individual confidential business consulting. We assist both existing and startup companies. And we can assist in areas like business planning, financial planning, marketing. We also have some specialization areas like manufacturing, import, export, technology, commercialization, and government contracting. In addition to our consulting, we conduct affordable educational workshops. We do some internally ourselves, and then we do some in partnership with our great partners that we have, such as the Women's Business Center, where we'll do workshops such as what we're doing today. And we just, in general, try to serve as a resource where we are able to provide and direct small businesses to the resources that are available in our community. One of the things that you'll find as a small business owner is that there are a lot of resources available in our community, and sometimes it's just kind of difficult to know what and where all those are. And so that's where organizations like ours and like the Women's Business Center can be very helpful in kind of helping you point out to where those resources are, whether it's us or whether it's someone else that is able to help you as you get started. As Amber mentioned, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat box. I'm going to leave some time at the end to take some questions. So, when you are starting a business, one of the first questions you're going to ask yourself is, where can I possibly go for funding? What are some options that I have? And generally, when people think about funding for their businesses in general, and for startups in particular, there are a few things that immediately come to mind. A lot of people ask about grants, investors, online lenders, different non-bank financing options, and then conventional bank financing. Now, what I will tell you is, for a startup business, it is very, very difficult, I would say almost impossible, to get conventional bank financing. And the reason for that is that typically what banks are going to look for when they're looking at financing a business is they're going to look at how long you've been in business, they're going to look at personal and business credit, and they're also going to look at your loan amount. So I'll explain one of those a little bit. They do consider your personal and business credit when you're looking for conventional bank financing, but two aspects to that. One, you typically haven't been in business long enough as a startup to really establish any business credit. And your personal credit is a factor, but it's not always the biggest factor. What they're really focused on is time in business. Most conventional lenders are not going to be really interested in working with you until you've been in business for a minimum of 2, and in some cases up to 3 or more years. That's really where you can start to become attractive to a bank. So that time in business is really important. The personal and business credit can be. The other thing is loan amount. A lot of times when you are just starting out a business, what you're going to find is that what you need is something maybe in the 50,000, 100,000 or less range, right? You want to take enough capital to be able to successfully start your business and sustain your business, but you don't want to take so much capital that you're going to have a debt issue and you're going to have issues making those payments. Well, one of the other things that you find is that a lot of times banks, they really don't get interested in working with a business until you are in that 3 to 500,000 or up range, to where you're asking for those larger amounts of money, because for them there's more of a return on investment for them, so it's a much better, it's much easier for them to get those approved. Investors, that's another common thing. A lot of times when people think about investors, the first thing they think about is family and friends. It makes perfect sense. Those that are closest to you, those that know you best, and those that are going to be the most supportive, most likely, of what you're going to do. One of the things that I would encourage you to do if you're going to go that route is to have something in writing for whatever it is that you're agreeing to do. A lot of times if you're talking about friends and family, whether it's parents, whether it's siblings, whether it's spouses, whatever those situations are, we kind of think to ourselves, well, they're family, they're friends. We don't really need to worry about it. But I think, remember, this is a business transaction, not just a personal transaction for somebody investing in your business. And so make sure that you are really thinking about what's that going to look like. Is this a grant or is this a loan? If I'm going to pay it back, when am I going to pay it back? Am I going to pay it back with interest? Those are the kinds of things that you want to work out, because you don't want to have any hard feelings at Thanksgiving with your family because somebody was expecting to get repaid and they haven't seen any money yet. So I really, really encourage you, if you're going to look at family and friends for investors, to get that officially in writing. Another good option for startups is angel investors. And there are various ways to do this. And there are angel investor groups around here. If any of you have seen the show Shark Tank, it's very similar to that. The idea is that you can go pitch to a group of investors, and they can determine whether or not they want to invest in your company. If that is something that you want to do, developing the business plan and developing the pitch deck to go along with that is something that we can help you to do. But what you want to think about when you go pitch to angel investors is you want to be really careful, and I'll say this with every funding option that you're going to look at. Okay. And that is, make sure you read the fine print and make sure that you know what the terms are going in. For example, with angel investors, one of the questions that you want to make sure you ask is what it is that they are getting in return. So typically, investors, in some cases, they will take a debt position in your company, meaning that they will expect you to repay a portion of the proceeds of what they give you over some period of time. But more commonly, what they're going to do is they're going to take an equity stake in your company. What that means is they're going to take ownership of a certain percentage of your company. And, I've seen it be as little as 1% to 5%. I've seen it be as high as 25 to 30. It just depends on, the investor and how much they're investing. And so what you really have to ask yourself is, as a business owner, is the amount of this investment that I'm getting worth giving up a portion of ownership in my company, and am I willing to do that? But if you are, that can be another good way to do it. Typically with equity ownership, what it is they will say, okay, we're going to take an ownership stake in your business, and then we are going to take a percentage of the proceeds over a period of the profits over a period of years. And so then once that's paid back to them, like say they take 3% a year of whatever profits you make, then once their initial investment plus a little bit is paid back, then they'll give up their ownership stake and you'll get full ownership of the company back. But either way, you want to really figure out what the terms of that are and make sure that that's something you're comfortable doing. Online lenders. So there are a lot of these out there. These are just a few. I did a quick Google search and pulled a few examples. You might have heard of some of these. On Deck, Cabbage, Lending Club, Prosper, Square Capital. These are some of them. I will say I've had some experience with these. my background is in small business lending. So before I came to this position, I actually worked for a few small business lenders that focused on financing for startups. And so we would work with clients who were, had some loans from some of these places. And what you really have to be careful of is to make sure that you understand the terms and the interest rate. Because what I will tell you is that the easier it is to get capital, the easier it is to get money, the more it's going to cost you to have it. Okay. So you can kind of think about it almost as like a spectrum, right? So on the one side, you have banks, and that is, those are your traditional banks. The big ones like the Bank of America's, the smaller ones like, credit unions and that sort of thing. But realistically, they're going to have some of the longer processes to get loans. They're going to require more information. They're going to require you to be in business longer. They're going to have higher credit standards and that sort of thing. But it's also going to be some of the, interest rate wise, there'll be some of the best rates and some of the best terms that you'll get. On the other end of that spectrum are some of these online lenders where, they can get you money. You can apply online. They can get you money typically in as little as 24 to 48 hours. But one of the challenges is that when you go to get a mortgage, you are required to be given by the lender an APR, an annual percentage rate. And what that is that's the full cost of borrowing the funds. So not just the interest rate, but all the fees and everything else that are associated with that as well. Small business lenders don't have to do that. So typically what they'll do is they'll give you an interest rate, and it'll be probably competitive with what you would get with a credit card. It'll be in the 10 to 15 to 20%. But then they'll start adding on all these other fees. And I've seen people paying as much as 40 to 50% on some of these loans. And a lot of times what they require is daily payments that they take directly out of your business bank account. So before you do anything else that day, you have to pay them. Now, I'm not saying that they're all bad, but what I'm saying is make sure that if you start looking into one of these as a potential funding source, that you're very cautious about reading all the terms and conditions and understanding what it is that you are getting into. Crowdfunding can be another option. And again, I just did a quick online search, and these are a few that came back. You've probably heard of things like Kickstarter, GoFundMe. Those are some of the more common ones. Crowdfunding can be used for a variety of different things, but starting a business is one of them. And these are some of the platforms listed here that have business aspects to them where you can raise money to start a business. So typically the way this works is you'll go on one of these websites and you'll put in information about your business. You'll do a pitch for it, for what you want to do. And people will have the option to then contribute to you starting that business or not. The nice thing about it is it's a grant. It's money that they're giving you. It's not a loan. You don't pay this back. A lot of times what people will do is they'll offer some kind of incentive to get people to donate to starting their business. So in other words, you might say, if you donate toward my goal and I get there and I'm able to open my business, I will give you 10% off everything you buy from me for the first year. Or, I'll give you a t-shirt, or I'll give you, some kind of special product or service that I'm not offering to anybody else. Something along those lines, some kind of incentive, something that's not huge cost to you, but some kind of incentive to get people to contribute. One of the things that you want to be careful about when you're looking at the different crowdfunding options is make sure that because on some of them, if you don't like say you put in a target, because for all of these, you're going to put in a target amount of money for what you're trying to raise. So let's say your target is $100,000. Some of these, if you don't get to $100,000, like say you only get to 70, they'll return, you don't get any of it. They'll return the money to the people that donated it. On others, you get whatever you raise, even if you don't raise your target amount in the time frame. And one of the things that I say about this too is really think about if your business is such that you can pitch it in such a way that it would be attractive to crowdfunding. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So I worked with a business several years ago. Some of you might be familiar with it. It's here in Charleston. It's called Pounce. It's a cat cafe. And the way that works is you go, it's down on Meeting Street. You go down there and they have cats. They have cats from the Humane Society. You can go in there and you can get coffee or a drink, something like that, and you can play with the cats. And if you like the cats, you can adopt them and take them home with you. And this was a business that, it has since franchised and grown just beyond just the Charleston area. But when she was starting, came to us for financing the place that I was working before, and decided to go this route to raise the equity that she needed to put in. And I'll explain what that means in a little bit. Well, she ended up raising enough money that she could fund the whole project that way, because businesses like that, where you have that are kind of really unique, that you have a niche, that you have a story, something like that, you might really want to think about crowdfunding as a good option for you. And then there's a couple of other options that I inadvertently dropped the slide out for, but there are other organizations that you can go to, other lenders that you can go to for financing as well. There are organizations in the area that are called CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions. Some examples of them that we have that work in this area are things like Climb Fund, things like South Carolina Community Loan Fund, things like Community Works, and we can get you connected with those. And what they really specialize in is they specialize in lending to people that are not able to go the conventional bank route for financing, either typically because they haven't been in business long enough, or they haven't started at all, or it could also be because there are credit issues, there are collateral issues, there are other things involved. So I know we can help you get connected with some of those. The Women's Business Center can as well, and I'll talk a little bit later about what they require. So what should you know, just kind of in general, about business financing? One, as I mentioned, conventional banks typically don't fund startups. You know, we get a lot of questions from people asking about grants to start a business. And what we tell people is there are not grants to start a business. Typically, there are not. Now, occasionally something will come up that somebody does that we're not familiar with, that maybe a city or county or something will do something for a short period of time. We've seen some of that, especially in relation to COVID and some of the things that have been made available. Typically, there are not grants to start a business. But what we tell people is, if you find a grant that you think you might qualify for, we can help you do that application for that grant. But typically, just know that as far as financing for starting a business, it's going to be loans that you're going to have to pay back. It's typically not going to be grants. Another thing that you should know going in is that there's really no such thing as 100% financing. So every lender of any sort that is going to do any financing for your business, they're going to want you to have some skin in the game. You're going to have to put in some of the financing yourself. Typically, what they're going to look for a startup is 10 to 20% as a minimum. And so let's just say, for example, that you need $100,000 total to get your business started. That means, depending on the lender, you're going to have $10,000 to $20,000 or more on hand to be able to put into that business. So now, a lot of times with lending for startups, they will tell you that they don't really care where that money comes from, as long as it is not from them. So that's where you can get into things like your investors, your friends and family, your crowdfunding, angel investors. This is where you can get some of this money to then be able to put into starting your business. So next, personal credit history is important. Most lenders, when they're looking at startup businesses, conventional banks are going to want to see that you've got a credit score of at least 680, most likely to fund your business. Most lenders that work with startups, they're going to want you to have at least 600 to 620 or higher. Now, in some cases, they can work with credit scores that are lower than that, but that's typically kind of where they start to look at, considering you to be eligible for financing. So a collateral is going to be required. Okay, so you're going to have to put something up to secure the loan. generally you're going to have to pledge whatever assets your business has, be that equipment, inventory, whatever else you have. They're also a lot of times going to look for real estate if you own it. And a lot of times they're going to ask for personal guarantees. They'll get one from you, and a lot of times they will ask for one from someone else, either a family member or, friend or somebody else that has some assets that can guarantee the loan. And basically what the personal guarantee says is, if I'm not able to repay this loan out of my business, I guarantee that I will repay it out of my personal finances, or this person that's guaranteeing it for me guarantees that they will repay it out of their personal finances as well. So if I could really emphasize two things for you here. If you are thinking about starting a business, two of the first things that I would do, number one, check your personal credit. And if you need some assistance on how to do that, on where you can go to check your credit, we can help you do that. Check your credit. If there's issues that are there, if there's things that are past due, if there's things in collection, if there's things you haven't paid, start working on that. Working on getting those things cleared up, because lenders are going to require you to deal with those things in some way. And I know the Women's Business Center, and Increasing Hope, that is their partner agency. They have some credit building stuff that they offer as part of their services, so they can be a great resource for that. So that's number one. And number two, start saving money. Start putting some money in the bank, so that when it comes time to actually start this business, you have some of your own cash to put into the bank. So what are you typically going to need for a loan application? These are a few of the more common things that lenders are going to look for. A business plan, 3 years of projections, a personal financial statement, personal credit history, resumes, tax documents, profit and loss balance sheet, bank statements, cash flow, loan documents, and a collateral list. So I'll talk more specifically about what some of these are and what some of them mean. And I'll say also that these are all things that we can help you get together. We can help you from the very beginning with your business plan and with your projections, because that's one of the most important aspects of what you're going to have to do as you are getting ready to go out and apply for financing. So let's talk about the business plan. So what this does is it defines your business. So it helps you figure out, what are my goals? Who are my customers? How much is it going to cost me to start this? How much am I going to be able to make off of it? How am I going to market it? These are the kinds of questions that a business plan helps you answer, that a business plan helps you address. And it includes things like, on the financial side, it includes things like balance sheet, income statement, cash flow. We'll talk about what all those things mean. It helps you allocate your resources, handle things, unforeseen complications, and make good decisions. So here's what I'll say about a business plan. I think it is the most important thing you're going to do when you go about starting your business, because as an entrepreneur, as someone who's thinking about starting a business, you've got a lot of good ideas. You've got something that you're really good at. You've got something that you're passionate about. You've got something that you want to do, but there's probably going to be some aspects of this that you've never done before, that you don't have any experience in, that you've never thought of before. So what this does is it forces you to get all these ideas that you have down on paper, to make sure that you've thought about everything you need to think about as far as how to, make sure that you know how to start and manage this business. And then it also is an opportunity for you to work with people like us, like the Women's Business Center, other experts, people who have been there before, who can help you to make sure that you've thought about everything that you need to think about to get your business started and to help it grow. The other thing I'm going to tell you about a business plan is that a lot of times what'll happen is, when you decide that you're ready to get financing for your business, you'll go to a lender, and the lender will say, well, okay, you need a business plan and projections for this. And then they'll send you to us or, somebody else to put those together. And then after that, and once you apply for the loan and you get the funding, you put the business plan in the drawer and you forget about it. I strongly encourage you, don't do that. Take this thing out every once in a while. I would suggest at least once a quarter, and take a look at it and make sure, just see where you are in comparison to where you thought you would be. Because I guarantee you that there's going to be some areas where you got it exactly right. And there's going to be some areas where you're not really where you thought you were going to be, for better or worse. It could be that your sales are higher. It could be you have fewer customers, but you're not going to be where you thought you were. And so then what you want to do is you want to say, okay, why am I not where I think I am? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And what kind of adjustments do I need to make sure that I'm growing this business in a way that is sustainable? So what it's really helping a lender understand is, do you understand the business that you're going into? Can you talk about it clearly and with a purpose? What is your business and why do people need it? Okay. And sometimes people get a little upset when I say this, but the truth of the matter is, no matter what business you're in, there are others that are doing that same business or something very similar to it. So the question is, tell me what's unique about your business, about the product or service that you're offering, that is going to make me as a customer go to your business and not go to somebody else's. Talk about how it's going to perform, how you can grow it. Is this something that's sustainable? These are the kinds of things that you want to be able to discuss in a business plan. Another thing that you're going to want to talk about, because for me as a lender, one of the questions I'm going to ask you is, what experience do you have? What qualifications do you have that help me to believe that you will be successful in this business? For example, if you're going to start a restaurant, have you ever worked in a restaurant before? Have you ever managed a restaurant before? If you're going to start a retail store, have you ever worked in that kind of business before? If you're going to do a service, do you have any ownership or management experience? Tell me about the kinds of experience and expertise you have that lead me to believe that you can be successful in this business. And then the other thing that you want to think about is, we all know that we have certain things that we're good at. We have other things that we just don't have a whole lot of experience with. Some people are better on the marketing side. Some people are better on the finance side, whatever it is. For wherever you're not as strong, are there people that you can bring in to help you to successfully manage those things? So a lot of times we always recommend that you consult with an attorney and an accountant early on when you're setting up your business to make sure that you've done everything properly. Might be that you want to continue to let a bookkeeper or somebody manage your books, or work with a marketing firm to help you do the marketing. Whatever it is, there's different ways that you can find the expertise out there to help you successfully grow this business. You also want to, as part of your business plan, analyze your market and your competition. So in other words, who are my customers for this? How many potential customers do I have? And how am I going to go about capturing them? How am I going to market this business so that I can reach my customers? They know that I'm here and they come to me. And market data and getting some different ideas about what the market looks like for wherever you're going to have your business. That's something that we can help you do. There's different resources around the community that we can point you to, where you can get some of that market data that will help you do that. And we can also review this to make sure that you have all the information in there that you need to show that you can be successful with this. So when you're looking at your market, another part of that is looking at your competition. So figure out, is there competition and who are they? Who are the others that do something similar to you in the market? How are you different? Why would they get it from you? And then most of the time, and we can help you do this as well, they're going to require what's called a SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's just when you go through and you think about what each one of these is and how you might deal with them or address them. For example, a strength could be a product or service that you offer that nobody else does. A weakness could be your lack of experience managing a business. Your opportunity could be, can I open other locations or grow into other markets from here, or can I add other products? Your threats could be, what if somebody opens up near me that does the same thing that I do? Those are the kinds of things that you want to think about, and think about how you would address each of those. Another part of it is making sure that you determine exactly how much money you need to do this and how you're going to use it. Can you justify it? So in other words, with these funds that I'm asking for, this is what I'm going to do. A lot of times when people go talk to lenders, a lot of times what I will hear people say is, because I'll say, well, how much money do you need to start this? And they'll say, well, how much do I qualify for? And that's not really the right answer to that question, because as a lender, I want you to tell me how much money you need and how exactly you're going to use it. Because what I don't want is, I don't want to give you more money than you need, because I don't want you to have a higher debt payment every month than what you really need or can afford. But what's funny is, as a lender, what I saw more often than that was people asking for less money than they really should have been. Because the other important thing is, I don't want you to be undercapitalized. I want to make sure that you have enough money going in that you can sustain this business until you're able to get profitable. Because for any business that you start, there's going to be a period of time to build your market and to really become profitable. And so you have to make sure that you have enough cash on hand, whether it comes from you, whether it comes from a lender, wherever it comes from, that you have enough cash on hand to be able to get through that time until you're able to actually turn a profit. So, and then the operating and financial plans, I'll go through these a little bit more on what these look like, the balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow, and so on. So what are lenders really looking for? What are things that you need to be thinking about? So these are what are in traditional lending circles known as the 5 C's of credit: character, capacity, collateral, capital, and conditions. And I'll tell you just a little bit about, as a startup, the kinds of things that you're going to need to be thinking about with each one of these things. For character, a lot of times what they're looking at is 2 things. One, they're going to be looking at credit history, and to say, hey, what does your credit history look like? Are you, if you have credit issues, have you taken care of them, or are you working on taking care of them? And a lot of times, depending on the lender, if they're working with you as a startup, what they're going to say is, okay, if you've had some credit issues in the past, that's fine, as long as you have addressed them and you're kind of on a good path now. The other piece that they're going to look at is qualifications. What is your background and history? What qualifications do you have that lead us to believe that you're going to be successful in this business? Personal financial statement is another thing that they're going to want to look at. So this is giving the lender an idea of what your personal financial position looks like. Okay, and just to give you a quick idea, some of you might have filled one of these out before if you were, purchasing a house or doing something like that. But the basic idea is that it's a list of your assets and your liabilities. And this is for your personal financials, not for the business. Because remember, at this point, you haven't started your business yet. So this is looking at your own personal financials, because as part of your character analysis, they're looking at credit, they're looking at your qualifications, but they're also looking at your personal financial strength. Because one of I'll get into that. I'll tell you what this is first. So you've got really 2 things you're showing here: assets and liabilities. Assets are things like cash you have on hand, if you have anything in checking or savings, any retirement funds you have, stocks and bonds. If you own any real estate, what's the value of that real estate, cars, anything else like jewelry, furniture, etc. Liabilities is what you owe on all that stuff that you have. Okay, so credit card payments, car loans, real estate mortgages, student loans, anything like that, those are your liabilities. That's what you owe. Now, you subtract your liabilities from your assets, and what that gives you is your net worth. Here you can see I just threw some numbers in here. This isn't a real client, just some stuff I threw in just to give you an idea. So, in this particular case, you've got a client that's got 469,000 in assets, 280 in liabilities, and a net worth of 189,000. Now, what you're going to find when you go through and do this exercise is that your net worth is not always going to be positive. So if you don't, for example, if you don't own a home, because that typically is one of the biggest things that gives people equity, or if you have student loans, if you have a lot of student loans, your net worth isn't going to be positive. What I will tell you is if you have a negative net worth, that does not necessarily disqualify you from getting a loan. It really depends on the lender. What a lender is going to look at when they look at this, and what they're really looking to see is, number one, do you have some cash on hand or in the bank that you can put into this business yourself? So they're going to look at your savings. They're going to look at how much cash you have in the bank to see if there's anything there that you can put in. They're also going to ask the question, do you have anything here that can be used as collateral? So that's where they're going to be looking at real estate. Depending on the lender, they might look at any cars you have. They might look at personal property like jewelry and furniture and that sort of thing. And then the other thing that they're going to look at is they're going to look at how do you manage debt? Because the way you manage debt for your personal, with your personal finances gives a pretty strong indication of how you're going to manage debt with your business. Okay. And it's not just, are you paying everything on time? That's the biggest piece of it, but it's also, how much debt do you have? I mean, if you have $100,000 in credit card debt, that's going to be an issue. That's going to be a red flag for some lenders, because what that says is that you're really extended personally. You've got a lot of high payments you have to make, which means that if the business struggles, you don't have a whole lot of extra cash in your personal life to put into the business should you need. So if you have a high amount of debt, that's something else you want to think about in addition to saving up some money and making sure that your credit is in order, is can you pay down your debt a little bit if you have really high debt? The things that are the biggest issue typically are things like credit cards and personal loans, things like that, just because that typically is unsecured debt, things like real estate mortgages and auto loans and things like that. That's not as big a deal, but they do look at credit card debts and debt. Another thing that they oftentimes will look at is student loans, because if you have a lot of student loans, that can be an issue sometimes too. So that's why they're going to ask you for a financial statement and the kind of things that they're looking for when they take a look at it. So they're also going to look at capacity. So if you're in business, they're looking at, can the business and does the business pay their bills when they're due? So do they have enough cash coming into and through the business that they're able to pay their bills? If it's a startup, what they're going to look at is, can the business owner repay the loan and put more money into the business potentially if need be, if it takes longer than expected to grow? And are there any outside sources of income that can go towards this? And that's where what you're really looking at is personal guarantees. So in other words, like, let's say that you currently have a job and you're looking to start a business. If you're going to keep that job while you have the business, then that's great, because what they're looking at is they're saying, okay, you've got a job outside the business. You're not dependent on the business to pay your bills, and potentially you're making a little bit of extra money that can go into the business if needed, if it struggles. If you're not going to keep your job or you don't have one, what they're going to look at is there somebody outside the business who has a job whose income could support the business if necessary? And for that, they can look at spouses, they can look at parents. A lot of times what we'll see is like with a husband and wife, where one of them will start the business, be an owner of the business and work in the business, and the other one will work whatever job they have and guarantee the loan, so that if there's additional capital needed for the business, they can put that in. But that's the kind of thing that they're looking for there. As another piece of this, as kind of looking at figuring out how the business is going to perform financially, this is where your projections are going to come in. And I will say, that I hear this from an awful lot of people that we work with. And this is why I encourage you to come to us or go somewhere else to get assistance on putting this stuff together. Projections can be very difficult. They're not, because you're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to figure out, how much is my business going to make? What are my expenses going to be? And how much money am I going to have left over? How long is it going to take me to turn a profit? Typically, what lenders are going to look for is 3 years of projections. They're going to want to see the monthly, at least for the first year. And there's really two pieces to that. One is a profit and loss, and the other is a cash flow. Okay, I wasn't sure if I put an example in there or not. So with the projections, the reason that you want the monthly for the first year is because what you want to see with the business is, every business is going to have some degree of seasonality, right? You're going to have some times of the year when you're going to do better than others. The other part of it is it's going to take you a certain period of time to grow to the point where you are able to turn a profit and kind of reach the full potential of the business that way. So what they want to see, the reason they want to see it monthly the first year is, like let's say you do really well January through April, then you struggle May through August, and then you do well again at the end of the year. So how much cash do you need on hand to make sure that you can get through those months in the middle of the year when you're not doing as well? So there's two different documents that you want to see here, and I can show you examples of this. One is the profit and loss, and the other is the cash flow. Profit and loss is just telling me, okay, this is how much, over the next 12 months, this is how much I'm going to make, this is how much I'm going to spend, and this is how much I'm going to have left over. So is my business going to be profitable in the first year? Excuse me. What cash flow is telling you is, when is my income going to come in, and when are my expenses going to actually be due? So for example, let's say that I tell you that this year you are going to make $250,000, you're going to have $200,000 in expenses, so you're going to have $50,000 in profit at the end of the year, right? Sounds great. But then what if I tell you, well, that $100,000 that you have to pay, that's going to be, that's all going to be due in the first 6 months of the year. And that, $200,000 that you're going to make, that's all going to come in the second 6 months of the year, right? So then how are you going to pay your bills for the first part of that year until your money comes in the second part of the year? And that's what the cash flow helps you to do, is it helps you figure out how much you need to have on hand to make sure that you can get through those times, to make sure basically that you always have enough cash coming through to pay the things you have to pay, like your rent, your payroll, your utilities, things that you have to pay to keep the doors open. It's very similar to the way you're going to think about your personal financials, right? I mean, the rent's going to come due, or the mortgage is going to come due the first day of the month, no matter what. So you got to make sure that you have enough cash on hand that month to be able to pay that. And again, we can give you templates for doing this. We can walk you through how to do it so that you can really see how it works. It can be kind of a tricky process to try to do it on your own. But it's also very important. It's one of the most important things that you're going to do. And this is something else that I would encourage you to revisit periodically, because if you're not hitting your projections, I mean, if you're exceeding them, that's great. But if you're falling under them, then that's something you have to address. You have to kind of figure out why. Okay, where am I coming up short? Okay. Collateral, these are things that are used to secure the loan. So in other words, if you're not able to repay the loan, what other security can I as a lender have on it? Hard assets are things like your equipment and inventory that goes with your business, any vehicles, any real estate, anything like that. They're things that the lender can take and sell should you not be able to pay the loan to be able to pay it off. Equity is where, in some cases they might say, we want you to put $50,000 of cash into the bank. We're going to hold that bank account till you pay off this loan. And if you don't make the payments, we'll just cash it out and put that toward paying off the loan. And then personal guarantee, that's your guarantee and any other guarantees that you get about to that if you're not able to repay the loan out of the business, that will repay the loan for you. And these are some examples that I mentioned: real estate, vehicles, furniture, fixtures, and equipment of the business, personal guarantees, guarantees from other individuals. I've even seen in some cases guarantees from outside businesses. Capital, as I mentioned, most lenders are going to require a minimum of 10 to 20% personal investment. That can be your own cash in the bank. That can be something you get through crowdfunding. That can be something, you know, family or friends give you. Wherever it comes from, they want to see 10 to 20%. Now, as I mentioned, and I'll emphasize this, having your own cash, having at least some of your own cash, is the best of those options, because lenders want to see that you are prepared to put some of your own cash on the line, that you're prepared to have some skin in the game. So if you're thinking about starting a business, start saving up some money so that you have at least a little bit to put in, that you can then go get an investor. You can then go do something like that to help you make up the difference to get to that 10 to 20%. If you're an existing business, or you've kind of opened the doors and you're still in that startup phase, any prior investment you've made in the business, a lot of times that will count. So any inventory you've already bought, any expenses you already had, that investment will count toward your part, your equity into the loan. Personal or business wise. Okay, so any personal funds you've invested into the business, or any business funds you put back into it, will count as well. And the way they see that is, if you're an existing business, looking at your business financials, your business financial history and financials, to see where there's cash that's been put in there that could potentially be counted as equity toward the loan. And then lastly, a lender is going to look at conditions. You know, does what you're trying to do make sense? So they're going to look at industry, they're going to look at the products that you're offering, and they're going to look at market trends. You know, is it something that is growing? Is it a growing market? Is it a shrinking market? Is it something that's new to market? These are the kinds of things that they're going to look at. They're going to look at, are they things that you can deliver? They're going to look at seasonality. You know, what are your kind of seasonal fluctuations to this business? Owning versus renting. Most of the time we tell people that when you're first starting out a business, it makes sense to rent as opposed to own, so that if the location isn't ideal the way you think it's going to be, you have more flexibility to actually be able to move and relocate. But there are some instances where, you know, it makes sense to own, or where owning becomes a factor in that. Does your location make sense? You know, it might seem like kind of a crazy example, but, you know, if you're opening a small mom and pop coffee shop, you probably don't want to open it across the street from a Starbucks. Okay. So does the location you're looking at for your business make sense? And who's your competition? You know, if there are 5 people in the area that already do what you do, then maybe you need to think about, you know, should I put this in another location? You know, or, you know, so it's looking at who is your competition, how much is there, what's different about your business than your competition. Okay, sources and uses of funds. This is another thing. Remember, I told you that, you know, a lender is going to want to see exactly how much you need to borrow and exactly how you're going to use it. And this is what's called a source and use of funds. And so, you know, we can help you through this process as well, to really make sure you've thought about how much it's going to cost you. How much is it going to cost you to buy inventory? How much is it going to cost you to make payroll? How much is it going to cost you to get your space? How much is it going to cost you to do all these things? And then that helps you to get at how much money you need to borrow to help this be successful. And we can help you put that together as well. So I've thrown a lot of information at you. I wanted to leave you some time to ask some questions. If you need some help, this is our website. You can go on and request counseling. And we, as I mentioned, you know, we can meet with you individually. We have templates we can provide you to help you do this. And here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. That information is so valuable. I know that it's a lot for everyone to kind of take in. A lot of you, you know, probably haven't delved into this. You're just starting your business. You're just thinking about how you're going to really launch it and grow it. And so this is such an important steps to take. And we are here to help you. So this SBDC is here to help you. They have lots of experts there. The Women's Business Center, we can sit down with you. We can help you get this business plan together, see where you are and what you need to do. We did have one question, Paul, that
Sure.
was asking, I think in the beginning when you were talking about conventional loans not really being an option for startups.
Right. That's right.
This one is asking about the SBA 7A loan and
Yes.
how that works with conventional banks.
Sure. So SBA is not actually a lender themselves. SBA doesn't lend money. What SBA does is they provide, remember we talked about those guarantees that you can get from other people towards repayment of your loan. Well, that's what the SBA does. They offer guarantees to banks to give banks an incentive to do it. So that is, yes, one example where, and there are some SBA lenders that are through conventional banks. There are some SBA lenders that are completely separate from that have their own organizations where all they do is SBA lending. And we can refer you to some options there as well. But yes, the SBA would be one example where what they can do is they can come in and provide a guarantee on that loan to a lender to really help you get that through. Now, one of the things though that you're going to want to think about with the 504 and the 7A is loan amount, because a lot of times they are really for, it's more difficult to get them if you're not in the 300, 400, 500, 600 and up range. Okay. If you're looking for what we call a microloan, which is 50 to 100,000 or less, that's where things like, if you're here in the Charleston area, like the Climb Fund, like South Carolina Community Loan Fund, like Community Works, that's where some organizations like that can come into play that can help you with some of those smaller loan amounts that maybe even SBA isn't willing to look at. And the other thing that you want to think about in that vein too, even if they're willing to do it, is not just but based on your loan amount, does it make sense for you in terms of the fees and everything else that you're going to have to pay to do an SBA loan? If you're looking to do a $300,000 or $400,000 loan, those fees aren't a big deal. But if you're looking for 50, they could be. So there might be other lenders that make more sense for you to look at depending on your particular unique circumstance.
Absolutely. And then we always suggest too, after, being in business a couple of years, go to your bank, go and get that loan refinanced. So
Absolutely. Typically when you go to one of these non-traditional bank lenders, your interest rate on most of these loans is going to be somewhere between 6 and 9% generally, maybe a little higher. The reputable ones, they'll get a lot higher than that depending on where you go. But even that is not as good as what you're potentially going to get at a bank, where you could maybe come in, somewhere in the 3 to 6% range. So we definitely encourage you, as soon as you kind of hit that point of being bankable, come back to us, come back to Amber, go to somebody that can help you work out getting that refinance so that you can get the better term and the better rate.
Absolutely. We had a lot of questions about what CDFIs look for, about, the credit. And I always like to say they really do look at the individual situation.
They do. 100%.
And they work with you. They won't even let you actually apply until they think you're ready. And so
that's absolutely right.
Yeah, they're great community partners, and we kind of do the beginning lead work and get you ready to go to them, and then they'll look it over and walk you through it. So they really do look at everyone's situation, what kind of impact you're going to have on the community, creating jobs. They want to see people in business and people successful in business.
They do.
So,
as a general rule, I would say if your credit is less than 600, you're going to want to do some work on that. And you're probably going to want to have some cash on hand, at least 10%, like I said, from somewhere. But as Amber said, and she's absolutely right, they do look at each case individually. Those are just kind of general broad stroke rules of thumb of some things that you want to keep in mind. Have some money on hand. Now, if you don't have any, that's going to become an issue, even for the CDFIs. But they are a lot more flexible in working with each individual situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, we've had some questions about setting up a one-on-one appointment to help with the business plan. So everyone, I will send out this recording and I will send you Paul's information as well as mine, and contact us, set up that first appointment, and we will work with you to get started on your business plan and getting started with your funding journey.
And I just wanted to emphasize with us as well that everything that we offer is confidential and free of charge. So
Yes.
it won't cost you anything. And, every discussion we have is confidential. We won't share your business plan or your financials with anybody. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, that will wrap up today's webinar. Again, look out for that email with the resources, and we look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.